Bom, boa noite a todos. Vejo que a casa está cheia. Eu fico muito feliz, em nome da diretoria, eu gostaria de agradecer a vocês a presença. E eu fico feliz que a gente está conseguindo trazer as pessoas, grandes nomes da propaganda mundial, para palestrar aqui, para mostrar trabalhos. A gente, mesmo com a crise, com a dificuldade financeira que uma instituição como o Clube de Criação, que não tem nenhum objetivo de lucro, nem consegue ter também, nem que tivesse, mas a gente está conseguindo, graças a Deus, trazer nomes de peso para falar aqui com vocês, com a gente, conosco, e pretendemos mesmo que nas próximas presidências, na próxima diretoria, na próxima chapa, que isso vire uma rotina. Acho muito importante para nós, criativos, e muito importante para o mercado, e muito importante para a reputação do clube, que a gente possa dividir com o mercado o que realmente faz uma criação de valor. Eu vou pedir que a Adriana faça a apresentação do Chuck Porter, porque, afinal, foi ela, que através dela que nós conseguimos fazer o convite, e ela teve a gentileza de intermediar a vinda do Chuck Porter para cá, para o Brasil, e dar um show de trabalho da Crispin em Bogusky, que eu não preciso apresentar como uma das melhores agências do mundo. Então, a Adriana vai fazer a introdução. Boa noite e vamos nos divertir hoje à noite.
Boa noite, gente. Obrigada por ter vindo. É um prazer poder estar oferecendo isso para vocês. Acho que essa iniciativa do Marcelo e de todos nós da diretoria de estar cada vez mais trazendo conteúdo bacana para vocês, gente de peso do mercado internacional, é sempre bom, é sempre muito rico para a gente reciclar e aprender. Eu sou suspeita para falar do Chuck Porter e da CPB, porque eu sou absolutamente fã do trabalho que eles fazem, eu sou fã deles, da forma como eles se relacionam com os clientes, com a comunicação, a forma como eles pensam, o crescimento estrondoso que eles tiveram em tão pouco tempo. Então, é difícil eu falar alguma coisa que não seja só elogios, né? De certa forma, na minha vida profissional, eu tive alguns contatos com eles, né? Em 2001, quando eu fui jurada em Cannes a primeira vez, o Bogusky foi meu parceiro. E agora, em 2006, eu tive o prazer de ser parceira do Chuck no Titanium Lions. Foi uma experiência muito legal, e uma particularidade dele que me chamou muita atenção é que, assim, claro que tinham inúmeros trabalhos da Crispin selecionados para o long e para o short list, e cada vez que entrava um trabalho deles para analisar, ele, como um lorde, levantava da cadeira e saía da sala para que a gente ficasse à vontade para poder discutir a respeito do trabalho. O Chuck nunca trabalhou em agência, ele é redator como base, sempre fez questão de ter essa liberdade de trabalhar como freelancer, até que ele se juntou à Crispin na década de 80, atuando como diretor de criação, ele se associou e transformou a Crispin no que ela é hoje. Eu acho que eu não tenho muito mais o que falar a respeito dele, eu acho que ele e o trabalho da agência dele vão dizer muito mais sobre a importância da CPB no mercado mundial hoje. Eu conversei com ele e falei: o que você quer que eu diga a respeito de você a hora que eu subi no palco para falar com as pessoas? E ele falou: só fala o seguinte, que eu tenho 3 filhos e que, graças a Deus, nenhum deles foi preso. Então, é isso. Chuck, muito obrigada por você estar aqui. É um prazer receber você. Por favor, gente.
Graças a vocês, estou de volta ao Brasil. Ok, vocês não sabem que eu cresci numa pequena tribo do Amazonas. E por essa razão, eu vou falar em português. No one's buying this, are they? This whole Portuguese thing. I tried to learn enough Portuguese to do the whole thing in Portuguese, and I realized that it would take me until after I was dead, so I decided to skip it. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you, Adriana, and everyone. I'm supposed to talk about creative. I don't really know how to talk about creative. A long time ago, early in his career, a reporter asked Bob Dylan, "What are your songs about?" And he said, "Well, some of them are about 4 minutes and some of them are about 5. Which is kind of the way I feel about creative. I don't really know how to describe it. I don't really think you can. So what I think I'll do is just show you some work and tell you how come we did it the way we did it. So imagine you're a 15-year-old and you go to the movies on a weekend and this is what you see.
You know, an operation like this does have a certain cost attached.
What if there was a deadly, toxic substance harvested by man?
42-year-old male found out.
NG to hook and barrel.
Capable of killing thousands of people in a single day.
In the last 24 hours, about 8,000 people just got 6 feet shorter.
What if someone manufactured this substance in massive quantities?
She's seizing.
Let's do them now.
And a select group of people knew about it.
A whole lot of people are dying. A lot of the people are making money off of it.
Then what if the knowledge began to leak out?
Someone's gone public.
Get creative with it.
Mr. Senator, there's no conclusive evidence.
I have the death toll figures right here.
Would anyone believe it?
Just don't wipe out a population the size of Manhattan and wake up and play golf the next day.
Watch me. I'm not gonna stick around and become the spike on somebody's bar graph.
Dude, you watch way too many movies.
This is not a movie.
So that's a commercial we did a long, long time ago, about 13 or 14 years ago, for a brand that we created. Am I talking too fast? I'll slow down. So that's a commercial we did a long time ago for a brand that we created in the U.S. called Truth, and it's an anti-teen smoking brand. And this ran in movie theaters, and it began in Florida and then went all over the country. And the night after it ran, on a Friday night, that Saturday, tens of thousands of kids were saying to their friends, "Have you seen that movie? Do you know anything about that movie? What's up with that movie?" And I think we realized then, we learned an important lesson, which is that popular culture is currency. Movies and sport and fashion and music, for every different sort of popular culture segment, that's currency. They have to know about that stuff. So if you can tap into that, you have a huge step forward. So I think that was an important lesson. I think the other thing that we learned from some of the campaigns that we did early on is the power of the story. The fact that if you're telling a story that engages the audience, it really doesn't matter what the medium is, people will be interested. And I think that since the emergence of digital, there's sort of been a myth that's come along that says everything has changed. Okay, the world is completely different now, and if you're a marketer, the world is completely different for you. And it began, I think it's sort of bullshit, it began really back in the US back in 2004, because that was the first year that TV viewership among young men dropped. And in fact, internet usage among young men went higher than TV viewership. So that's when the whole thing started about, is the 30-second TV spot dead? And it became sort of like conventional wisdom. I mean, my gardener is like, you think the 30-second TV spot is dead? It's what everyone was talking about. And the other factor that I think contributed to it is media fragmentation. Obviously, with the internet, people are watching less TV. Even TV broadcast is more fragmented. So it's fragmented. So everybody is writing books and articles and making speeches and having seminars about the whole world has changed and you have to change the way you think about your brand. I don't think that the most important or the most valuable piece of information about how you think about brands is going to come out in an article that was published last week or a book that was published last year. I think it came before that. I think it came roughly in about 380 BC, and I think it came from one of the first really great advertising people, Plato, and what he said is, there is no learning without emotion. And I have this stuck up in my office in English. Almost everyone in the agency does, because people learn from fables and parables and sometimes advertising. People learn from great stories. That's how we learn about the world, and that's how we learn about brands. So I think that the idea that everything has changed, the medium can change, and the medium is changing dramatically. The way people use media is changing dramatically, but the power of the story isn't changing. And if you can't tell a good story, you can be the best media buyer in the world, you can be the most forward-thinking technologist in the world, and you'll still fail. So in this world where I believe the story is the most important thing, I want to talk about a few things that we've learned about trying to tell good stories. And I think probably one of the most important is to stay loose and back winners. We don't any longer do one-year-long media plans. We hardly do 3-month-long media plans. We don't do creative platforms that are designed to say, we're going to say this now, this then, and this next year. The world is moving too fast for that. We throw tons of stuff up and see what people like. That's what the internet is for. I mean, the greatest advantage to marketers of the internet is it's a 50 million people focus group. You can throw stuff up and in real time, in real life, find out what people like. And I want to show you an example. This is a thing we did which got famous a long time ago. It's for Burger King. It's called the subservient chicken. It was a chicken, and you could tell it to do stuff. And, you know, people have said to us, well, why does this do Burger King any good? And our answer is, well, you know, Burger King is called Burger King. It's not called Chicken King. So we want people to be aware that they sell chicken. That's what it was all about in the first place. Anyway, we put this thing up early on when we had the account, and it was amazing. Within 12 days, it had gotten 100 million hits. 2 weeks after it went up, it was voted in Tokyo as the greatest website of the year in Japan. Which I thought was sort of surprising. So what we took from this is there must be something about this weird-looking guy in a chicken outfit that people like. So we were introducing a new chicken sandwich at the time, and we thought, okay, if people like it, we'll use the character. And this is the spot we did.
TC, a.k.a. Tender Crisp. Spicy, a.k.a. Spicy Tender Crisp. The Golden Bird TC versus the Red Hot Spicy.
Está rojo de caliente.
2 chickens, 1 quest. Burger King presents the Chicken Sandwich World Championship. See who wins free on DirecTV.
Can't control the chicken.
Tender Crisp, Spicy Tender Crisp. Decide which one's best at Burger King now.
We actually staged this fight between these two guys dressed like chickens, and we had all the commercials. We had the weigh-in commercial where they got in a fight, and we actually had the fight, and we broadcast it on DirecTV, and we tried to get Las Vegas to take bets on it, but Las Vegas is way too smart for that. So, but it was interesting, and I think another thing we learned from the whole chicken thing is just how really global the internet is. I mean, we all know that, but to have it demonstrated was sort of interesting because this guy in this chicken outfit, it was also interesting because when we were running these spots, an animal rights group wrote to the New York Times and said, look at those chickens are fighting. And so we wrote to the New York Times and said, these are guys dressed like chickens. But we did put a disclaimer on the spots that says no chickens were harmed during this. But it was interesting to us because this chicken character in certain markets, and Brazil was one of them, Japan was one of them, Spain was one of them, became an icon. So we do Burger King Spain right now, and for us in Spain, this is an ongoing character. And I want to show you a couple of spots that we just did. It's for a new spicy, sweet, sort of sweet and sour chicken sandwich in Spain. These run only in Spain. And the line, which I'm sure you'll understand, is sweet but not too sweet. And there's 2 commercials, and the second one is actually still on the air, which I find amazing.
Pollo. Un poco dulce. Un poco no tan dulce. El nuevo Tender Crisp con salsa de mostaza y miel de Burger King. Carne 100% pechuga de pollo. Pollo. Un poco dulce. Un poco No tan dulce. El nuevo Tender Crisp con salsa de mostaza y miel, de Burger King. Carne 100% pechuga de pollo.
That's an example of something that started started online and then went offline because people liked it online. And we try to be flexible enough to go. We try to be flexible enough to be able to do anything. We try to be flexible enough so that when we do something that gets a positive reaction and begins to get some traction with the audience, we can follow up on it in every way. I want to show you a commercial that we did introducing the new VW Jetta. Are there Jettas in Brazil? They have Jettas, yeah? VW, Volkswagen Jetta. Anyway, it was introducing the new Jetta to the US, and it's a small family car, and it's a very safe car. It got the highest safety rating, so safety is what the story was. So this is the spot we did to introduce the car to the US, one of the spots we did.
Just gives me the feeling like she's not like listening to me.
Have you tried not saying like every other word?
What?
Remember your ski trip story?
Yeah.
I was like going down the hill and like this guy like cut me off and like there was a crowd and like
come on, that's
and I was
not
like,
me.
Look, stuff either happens or it doesn't happen. Stuff doesn't sort of like happen.
Holy.
Some TV networks wouldn't play it until after 9 o'clock at night because it's violent. And a lot of people didn't like it, but a lot of the people that we were talking to, which were essentially young families, really loved it. And it seemed to engage them. So we thought, okay, there's something about crashing these cars that these people like. So when you went online, you know how you can go online with the car and configure it, and you pick the colors, and you pick the interior and so forth. So when you went online to configure your new Jetta and pick the transmission and the colors and so forth, once you've configured it, you can decide what you want it to crash into. And some people came and played with this site for days. These were the two most popular. And Volkswagen's pretty cool. Most car makers wouldn't put a broken car on their website, but I think they got it. It was interesting because this campaign was pretty controversial, and a lot of people didn't like it. But when we broke it, it sold every Jetta in America in 90 days, all of them. Times were a little better then. I think that there's another myth, and I think it's due to a couple of things. I think when a survey was done talking to people about technology and how technology has changed their life. And they asked people, which of these technologies has changed your life the most? Changed it either very much or very, very much. And handheld email is obviously there. Satellite radio is there. But TiVo and DVR, almost over half the people say, this has changed my life dramatically. So what that does is frighten broadcasters a lot, because obviously what they're saying is these people are zapping our commercials. So that's a thing that happened. And I think the other thing that happened is there was, and these were all in the US, but I think that they're probably pretty universal. When they did a survey on multitasking, like if you're doing this, are you doing something else? People who were on the internet and watching TV, almost 70% of the people, when they were on the internet or watching TV, said they were doing something else at the same time. So I think that sort of created another myth, and the myth says the customer is in control. And I hear that all the time now. I was at a meeting in New York about 2 weeks ago, and a guy there who's a very famous guy whom you've heard of, who runs a huge global agency, said 8 times the customer is in control. And my attitude is, when wasn't the customer in control? I don't remember when we could make people watch our commercials. I don't remember when we could make people read ads. The customer has always been in control. I think that the only thing that's really happened, what technology has really done, is it's made it easier than ever to ignore you, because they can zap you. or they can do something else. So it's easier than it ever was to ignore you, which says to me that interrupting people is not such a good marketing plan because they can ignore you. But I think the other thing that technology has done is it's made it easier than ever to fall in love with you. Because if you tell them a story that engages them, and it's either entertaining, or it has information, or it has something they want, they can go online. And they can spend days with your brand if they want to. So this is a trade-off that I believe favors good storytellers. The fact that if you begin announcing to people something they don't want to hear, you're gone. Your history, adios. But if you begin engaging them with a story that they find interesting, they're yours forever. And that's a trade-off that we will take. And I think it's going to be good for the business. We did, for Burger King also, when the Simpsons movie came out, we did a co-op with the Simpsons movie, and we did some spots with Homer Simpson and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, a typical co-op. But what happened was these spots led you to this website. And the website said, Simpsonize me. So you could send in a picture that looks something like this, and the website created for you a picture that looks something like this. Millions of people went to this website. The commercials were not that great. They were Homer Simpson talking about Burger King. It was boring. The website was cool. So I think that you know the whole idea of technology killing creativity, I think it's going to be, frankly, I think it's going to be the exact opposite. And I think it's interesting because I think that this revolution that's going on, and there is a revolution going on, the revolution that's going on right now isn't just about writers and art directors. I mean, in our agency, and I believe in a lot of agencies, everyone is involved because great ideas come from everyone. I don't even understand silos anymore, and I don't know how you can work with them. Keep in mind, I've never worked at any other agency, so I don't know anything. All I know is the way we do it, and I can't imagine us doing it without everybody in the room from the beginning. And I want to just show you one. I mean, you know, now they're calling it crowdsourcing, and it's become like, you know, it's become the cool new sort of thing. We just call it going to work. But I want to show you one thing. Domino's is a client of ours, and Domino's, is there anyone? I hope there's no one here from Domino's, because here's the reality of Domino's. Domino's pizza is not very good. I mean, it's okay, but it's not very good, you know. And if you're, you know, I have a son who's 20, he thinks it's pretty good. Anyway, but what they do is they get it to you fast. It's easy, it's easy. You can be lying on your couch and they'll bring a pizza and put it in your lap in a half an hour. That's what Domino's is about. So we went to our agency, the whole agency, and said, look, we can run all the ads in the world, but they're not going to make that much difference. Can we make Domino's even easier? Because that's what Domino's is about. So they created this thing called the Pizza Tracker, and for the first time ever, in the U.S., it's called TiVo. You know, it's a recording when you record TV, right? Is it called TiVo here? I don't think it's called TiVo. Okay. On TiVo in the U.S. now, you can click on your TiVo and order a Domino's pizza. You don't even have to get up from the couch. You don't even have to get dressed. You can click on and order a Domino's pizza, and at the bottom of your screen, you get this Domino's Pizza Tracker that tells you exactly when it's going to be there. It has done more for Domino's business than any ad we could ever run, and it came out of our IT department. It didn't come from a writer or an art director. It came from a programmer who said, I think we can get him to do this. So that's what I'm talking about. Of course, you have to do a spot, because we make spots, because everybody wants to go to Cannes, but here's the spot we made.
Hey, honey. The Domino's lady just said we've got 30 minutes. You think what I'm thinking?
What are we going to do with the other 28 minutes?
You got a hot pizza.
You got it to your door.
Domino's.
You got 30 minutes.
Another thing that we believe is that consistency is good, but surprise is better. When I was at university, which was at the very end of the 18th century, We used to take a media course about reach and frequency and da-da-da, and they had proven scientifically through psychological studies that the optimum frequency of running a spot was 8. After 8 times, then people could remember it. We don't really believe that. Especially when we're talking to kids, we often run a frequency of 1, maybe 2. 8 times is way too many. If it's any good at all, people are bored to tears by the 8th time. We believe that people would rather have a conversation than be announced to. And if you're having a conversation, you can't say the same thing over and over again. You got to say new stuff. So we believe in changing the story, as long as it's always got the same voice. We used to have IKEA until they fired us, but this is a commercial that we did for IKEA that I think sort of demonstrates what we're trying to do, with surprise.
Many of you feel bad for this lamp. That is because you're crazy. It has no feelings, and the new one is much better.
I never liked that spot as much as everyone else, but there you have it. Another thing that we believe in is using traditional media in untraditional ways. We introduced the Mini Cooper to the U.S., and here in Brazil, I know they have, in the U.S. they're very big, they have direct response TV, where there's an 800 number or whatever, and you call in. We thought, okay, all of the car companies, they all look alike, and there's all a pretty picture of a car driving up Mount Sanitas, just north of San Francisco, and da-da-da. Let's start doing some direct response spots. And for one thing, the media is cheaper, and the direct response guy said, okay, if you want to do direct response commercials, you have to have a product to sell. So we thought, we can make up a product. So this is the commercial we made.
It's happening all around the globe. People getting tricked by counterfeit brand name merchandise, premium watches, sunglasses, and you won't believe what else is being knocked off. Mini Coopers. That's why you need this important DVD from the Counterfeit Commission. You'll get a crash course on how to spot a fake. You'll hear from humiliated victims.
I thought a Mini Cooper for $1,200. What's motor, right?
Wrong. We'll even take you overseas and show you how they duplicate Mini's signature look.
You just paint the roof, slap on some bonnet stripes, boom, boom, no one can tell the difference.
Until they try to park it, drive it, or turn it. Don't be fooled by imitations. Be certain your Mini is genuine. To order counterfeit Mini Coopers, visit counterfeitmini.org or send a self-addressed stamped envelope to the Counterfeit Commission.
So about 16,000 people bought that. I have no idea who they were. Another thing that we believe is that everything is interactive. When we do print advertising, and we have historically, we try to do print advertising that's just as interactive as digital. That you can actually play with, that you can respond to, that is not just a message on a page. And I want to show you one example. We used to have Molson beer in the U.S., and Molson is a Canadian beer. It's huge in Canada, has half the market, very small in the U.S. And they came to us and they said, let's make TV commercials, just like Budweiser does. And we said, well, you know, if we do that, for every one TV commercial we can run, Budweiser can run 360. So maybe we won't do TV commercials. So obviously the audience for this is young men. So we tried to figure out how to reach them in a different way. So in Cosmopolitan magazine, women's magazine, we ran this ad. It's the worst ad we've ever done. It's probably the worst ad ever done. It's a picture of this guy, and it says, the line is, his address is the intersection of compassion and confidence, and his beer is Molson, okay? We ran this in Cosmopolitan. Then in about 15 men's magazines, we ran this ad, and it says, hundreds of thousands of women pre-programmed for your convenience. And The whole idea is that there's like this pseudoscience in here that says, we ran this ad in Cosmopolitan, 7 million women read it, and now when they see you drinking a Molson, they'll have all these positive feelings. So what happened was, and we didn't know, because nobody ever knows if anything's going to work before you run it, but it worked. And they got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of requests for reprints of this ad. So we were like, okay, so there's something in this fake advertising thing. So we went and talked to men's magazines, and we said, what about if we buy the back cover of your magazine and make a different magazine out of it? And we talked a few of them into it. So the first one we did was called Trust Fund. And it's the magazine for those about to inherit millions. And that was on the back cover of these men's magazines. And it says, you know, spend extravagantly on someone you love, choosing a butler, or things like that. And on the inside of the back cover, it says a whopping $90,000 investment in you. And what it says basically is, take this, when you go to a bar, put it on the bar next to you. If you bring a girl home, leave it on the coffee table, it'll work. And when we ran this, all of the magazines that this ran as the back cover sold off the shelves. So we thought, okay, we've got something going here. So we did another one. This was called Aspiring Groom, when you're ready to commit. And some of the articles are Bachelor Parties, the drunken orgy you just don't need. And my favorite article, Why Your Stuff Has to Go. And the last one we did was Animal Rescuer. The how, where, and why of assisting animals in need. So I think this is an example of, people talk about, well, interactive is new. I don't think it's very new, and I think it can be done in every medium. Another thing that we believe is the best buzz is free buzz. I hope that that's what this says. One of the filters that we use for all the work that we do is, are people going to write about this? Are people going to talk about it? Is it going to get publicity? Because publicity for most people is more credible than advertising is. So in fact, a lot of times, a lot of the work that we've done, really, it's sort of an exercise we have in the agency. We start with a press release. We say, okay, let's write a press release and, or have a PR event and see if advertising comes out of it. So this is another commercial that we did for Truth, and our original idea was to actually just stage this event as a publicity event, and then we thought, well, if we're going to do it anyway and spend the money to do it, why don't we make a spot out of it? So this is the spot we made.
You know what? We're going to leave this here for you so you can see what 1,200 people actually look like.
We really got a big fine from New York for doing that, but I guess it was worth it. As I said, a lot of times we try and start with, we believe news is more interesting than advertising. So a lot of times we try and start with a press release and create some news and then make advertising out of the news. And primarily it's so that I think people are more interested. If you've got two people talking about a commercial, it's more interesting if they're saying, did you see what those guys did? As opposed to saying, did you see what those guys said? So we try and do stuff. We try and create news. And we do it for Burger King. And we were going through this exercise, and someone said, okay, here would be an interesting press release. What if Burger King stopped selling their best-selling product? We thought, well, that would certainly be interesting. So we did it. We went to a store in Las Vegas, and we said, let's see what will happen. And we shot it, and this is what happened.
We stopped selling the Whopper for one day to see what would happen.
We no longer carry the Whopper.
You don't have a Whopper?
Oh, my God. They're absolutely foolish to do such a thing.
Yeah, that's upsetting.
That's about the stupidest thing I ever heard.
I want your manager at the window. Is this a joke? You cannot be serious.
The Burger King doesn't have the Whopper. They might as well change their name to Burger Queen.
Yeah. What happened was, people freaked.
Get me a Whopper.
We swapped out the Whopper for a Wendy's burger to see what would happen.
This is clearly a Wendy's burger.
Clearly?
Right.
Okay, they have the square patty.
I hate Wendy's. What's going on? I eat Burger King. I don't eat Wendy's. What can I do to resolve this? All I want is a Whopper.
Okay.
Get me a Whopper.
Okay. There's the boss. We just pulled a prank on you.
Whopper. Anything else is a freaking disappointment.
I'll get out this thing. Oh.
And we spent about $80 to do that because we didn't really have any idea what would happen. And of course, the client is saying, I don't know that we want to tell the world we're not selling our best building. I mean, that may be a mistake. So we did it, and it worked pretty well. Another thing that we believe, I'm not sure what this says in Portuguese, but in English what it means is don't feed the gorilla. And we started out doing work only for challenger brands. We never, until we got Microsoft, we never ever had a category leader. So we always had challenger brands. And it's interesting if you're a challenger brand. There was a really interesting piece of research done in the UK a few years back, and then it was replicated in the US with the same results. And basically what it said was this: if you show people commercials and wait 5 minutes and then go back and say to them, what was that commercial for? On average, 60% of the people attribute the commercial to the category leader. So if you showed them a running shoe commercial, on average, 60% would say it's Nike. So it's interesting because what most challenger brands want to do is look like the category leader, which is the exact opposite of what they should do, because everyone's going to think it's them. So that's kind of what we mean by that. And we work really, really, really hard to do the opposite of what the category leader would do. When we introduced Mini Cooper to the US, we didn't have a lot of money, and so we tried to, like typically, if you're introducing a new car brand in the US, you buy sports programming. You buy football games and you buy baseball games because that's where car buyers are looking. So we thought, okay, we want to get that audience, but we don't just want to run a spot like everybody else would. So rather than buying commercials, we bought seats in the stadium. And what we did is we went to baseball games and football fields and baseball stadiums, and we bought box seats and we put the Mini in it. This was, in the US, Monday Night Football is a big deal, Monday Night NFL football. This was at a Monday Night Football game. We put a Mini in the stands. It got about 65 seconds worth of airtime, which is worth roughly $600,000. We paid $12,000 for the seats, and the Rams won. The other thing that most car brands do is they buy a lot of outdoor because people who are drivers see outdoor. So we thought, okay, it's a great audience, we want to be there, but rather than buying outdoor boards, what we did is we put the Mini on top of SUVs, and we drove around 6 major urban areas in the US, LA and San Francisco and Miami, and we drove around and says, what are you doing for fun this weekend? And where all the fun stuff goes, the kayaks and the windsurfers and the skis, we put the Mini. And it was interesting because Mini is owned by BMW, and BMW is German. So they're interested in like real facts. So we proposed this idea, and it wasn't cheap, and they said, how can we measure this? How can we know what we're buying? And we said, we think it's cool, you know. So so they sent 3 people over, marketing people over from Munich to ride along, and they went to Las Vegas, and they went to Miami, and they went to Los Angeles, and they went back to Munich, and what they said is, you know, it's going to be very, very hard for us to specifically quantify this, to see how many eyeballs we got. But what we do know is this: everywhere we went, if we went to shopping malls or stopped at a stoplight, people took pictures of us. No one has ever taken pictures of our outdoor before. So sometimes you have to have a little faith, I think. We've been lucky. We've won a lot of awards. A lot of people think we're arrogant jerks who only care about awards, and that's not true, and it hurts our feelings. Our families see this. The reality is we're arrogant jerks who don't only care about awards. I think part of the reason we're able to do what we do is because we measure everything. It's how we get paid. All of our client contracts, all of our compensation agreements are at least to some degree performance-based. So the better we do, the more we get paid. And they're performance-based based on what the client is trying to buy with their dollars. And usually it's sales, but it's not always sales. With Mini Cooper, they already sold out their first year. They just wanted to make sure that it didn't become a girl's car. So that's what they were trying to buy is a brand perception that this is not a girl's car. So we measure whatever the client's trying to buy, and we get paid for that. And I think that this is something that's going to happen more and more, and particularly with the economy where it is now in the tank. Equity, stock is cheap, and money is valuable. I think more and more smart agencies are going to make more and more equity sharing or performance sharing deals with their clients. And I think that's a good thing because it will put clients and agencies on the same page, and that almost always results in better work. At least in my experience it does. But one of the things you have to do when you're getting paid per performance is you have to try and go further upstream. We call it taking a giant step back. We want to get back closer to the product. Alex Bogusky and I can remember one time we were talking about Mini Coopers, in fact, and we were both saying, you know, we've done some interesting work for Mini Cooper, but Minis themselves are much cooler than the ads, and they're much cooler than any ad we can do. The product is always, with the exception of maybe liquor and fragrances, otherwise the product is always more important than the advertising. So we're trying to get closer and closer to the product. And I wanted to show you a couple of examples of things we're trying to do. VW, a year and a half ago, was going to bring back the Golf to the U.S. And so they came to us and said, we got to do a campaign for the new Golf. So we did some research and we found that in the U.S., the Golf is an interesting brand global or around the world, but in the U.S., Golf doesn't have, I mean, this is a young person's car. This is for entry-level car buyers. That's not what people think about Golf in the U.S. It had a really lame brand perception. So we went to Volkswagen and said, look, you've got a brand here that we're starting with a lot of negative baggage. Maybe we should rebrand it. And they're like, that's going to cost a fortune. Go home, just do this. So we came back to them with more research, and we said, you know, you have another brand, a dormant brand, that still has great positive recognition in the U.S. Why don't you just rebrand this car? We know it's going to cost a lot of money. We think it's going to be worth it. So we did, and this is the spot.
Sky's perfect blue, no cloud could spoil the view. It's a sign from above that shows that we're in love. And the bees are flying in the trees. The sun's in the sky, just for you and I. It's a sign from above that shows that we're in love.
So that was the new rabbit, and the website looked like this. You could match your rabbits, and you could mate rabbits, and you get different, and sometimes you come out with a rabbit. And anyway, yeah, there's one other. With Burger King, we've gotten to the point where, obviously, in the U.S., more and more people, and I'm sure it's true here, more and more people are eating the food that they buy at fast food outlets in their car. It becomes finger food that they eat in their car. In the U.S., it's a phenomenal number. So we began thinking about what kind of products could we create that people could eat in their car. So this is a product that was actually created by a creative director at our agency, and then we worked with the kitchens at Burger King to sort of perfect it, if you can call it perfect. But it's interesting to me because the idea for the product came from the agency. And since it's about driving and it's about eating in your car, we thought, okay, a perfect tie-in would be NASCAR, the car racing guys. So this is the spot we did to introduce the new product.
Back in the early days, they used to hand me the whole chicken on a pole.
You see how we put this chicken on that pole? They'd run that car in there, just stick that chicken right in there in your face.
Then they came up with a drumstick to get the grease all over your hands. It goes right to the steering wheel. Well, then they incorporated the chicken sandwich. And, you know, that didn't work out at all. Now they got the chicken fries. All white meat, streamlined for high-speed consumption. You got to feed the need for chicken fries.
This is like the longest presentation I've ever made. Because Adriana said, you know, we want you to talk for an hour. I'm like, anybody in the world who talks for an hour should be arrested. So I promise I'm going to be done in just a minute. I think it's important to remember that the whole world is a moving target. You know, we talked before, I don't think that everything has changed. I don't think everything has changed at all. But I think it's, for our agency anyway, it's critically important to spend a lot of time talking to the audience. And people accuse us of, well, you know, you guys are really great at advertising to young men, but you don't know anything about anything else. And that's partly true. But we try very, very hard to spend a lot of time with the audience, because what we really do, and I think what we all really do to one degree or another, is try and manipulate pop culture. That's what we do. And so you have to understand it. And I think it's important to also remember there are lots of pop cultures. There are people who can name for you every member of the Brazilian fencing team. These are pop cultures, but if you're going to talk to them, you have to understand them. And there's, I think, an interesting case that we had Virgin Atlantic Airlines, and it was a really interesting problem, because for Virgin Atlantic, they make basically all of their money, all of their profit on one route, which is New York, London. And they make most of that profit on business travelers, because they buy upper class and premium economy. So who we were really talking to, and other people make a decision based on price. These people can be persuaded. So we realized who we're really talking to is, we're talking business travelers who fly from New York to London. So we researched that and we found out, okay, they're mostly men, that's a fact. And so how do we reach them? We've got these men flying back and forth. Well, we know one thing they do is they check into hotels. They're business travelers, so they go to hotels. So we studied that, and we found that single male business travelers who check into hotels more than half of the time buy an adult movie. I just play the cards I'm dealt. There you have it. More than half the time they buy an adult movie, and they watch the movie for an average of 7 minutes. So we said, let's make a 7-minute adult movie for Virgin. So we went to Virgin and we said, we think this is a good idea, and they were reluctant, but they're a pretty risky company. So then we went to the hotel LodgeNet that runs the movies, and we said, we'll give you a free 7-minute adult movie. And they said, we don't do this. We don't do ads and stuff like that. And finally, because we have great media negotiators, they talked him into doing it. So for about a year, if you were staying at a hotel in New York or London and you were looking at the pay-per-view, and you know they have all the previews of, you know, here's Terminator 11 and and then like the music gets softer and the lights go down, and they say, and for adult pleasures, if you were in a hotel in New York or London, this is what you would have seen.
Meet the CEO of her very own lingerie company.
I own an international lingerie company.
Go Jet Set Go Productions presents a story of one woman's initiation into the mile-high world of business and pleasure.
Mixing business with pleasure, then.
Sweet and innocent.
So it went on and on. I apologize. I want to talk for 1 minute about something that's going on, at least is going on in our world right now. I'll bet it's going on in your world, is that clients are becoming maybe a little more risk averse, and they want to begin researching creative, or research creative more than they used to, because they're worried about the dollars. And I want to tell you what we think about that. What we think is this: when Einstein came up with his greatest thinking, when he came up with the formulas that changed the world, he was working by himself as a clerk in a patent office in Switzerland. When he got to Princeton University, where he was surrounded by hundreds of specialists, not much happening. So what we believe is this: it's hard to research yourself to glory. What I believe is that one smart, talented person is worth every focus group in the world. And I think that, you know, I guess a lot of this is just our opinion, but if you look at Hollywood, no one in the world focus groups harder than Hollywood does. They focus group everything. They focus group every new TV series. They focus group every movie. And there's a really interesting story, which I've actually checked out because I've used it before, because I just love it. And I've checked it out, and it is in fact true. Lionsgate Films, which is an independent filmmaker in Hollywood, they focus group all their movies like everyone else does. And the movie that focus grouped highest in the history of the studio, highest in the history of the studio, is a picture called Aquila and the Bee. I mean, it was a nice movie. I saw the movie. It was a nice movie, okay? The picture that focus grouped lowest, worst in the history of the studio was Pulp Fiction, which probably gives you an idea of why Quentin Tarantino is so violent. But I think that that's interesting because I hate focus groups. Anyway, I want to show you a spot that we did that did not, in storyboard form, we don't really focus group creative, but we talk about it. And nobody liked this. I didn't like it. But a couple of people liked it, and they liked it enough to get it made. And so we ran it, and it was kind of interesting because it was huge in the US, and then we ran it in Germany, in English, in Germany, and it was voted most popular spot of the month in Germany in English. So here's the commercial.
I am man, hear me roar, in numbers too big to ignore, and I'm way too hungry to settle for chick food. Cause my stomach's starting to growl, and I'm going on the prowl for a Texas double whopper. Man, that's good. Oh yes, I'm a guy. I'll admit I've been fed quiche. Wave tofu, bye-bye. Now it's for Whopper beef I reach. I will eat this meat till my innie turns into an outie. I am starved. I am incorrigible. And I need to scarf a big burger, beef, bacon, jalapeno, good thing down. Yeah! I am hungry. I am incorrigible. I am mad.
The Texas Double Whopper. Eat like a man, man.
I think another thing that's obviously going to happen partly as a result of just simply the movement of technology and the way people use it, and also because of the recession, because digital is more measurable, is there going to be a significant move to digital. And I think in the US and probably in the world, we learned an enormously valuable lesson during the presidential campaign. Obama did an amazing thing. He was able to create a community online of about 14 million people who became passionate evangelists for the brand. And it was great. And he raised $400 million online. He raised $400 million. And he had 14 million people. But what he did with the $400 million is even more interesting. What he did with the $400 million is he spent it running TV spots. That's what he did with it. Because that's how you move the masses. He spent $300 million on TV spots, more than twice as much as any other candidate. I like this story. I like this story for a whole bunch of reasons. The reason I really like this story is because 14 million is a huge number of brand evangelists, but it's not enough to get elected president. You have to go out and talk to the world. And the way he chose to talk to the world, and these guys are smarter than anyone. They poll every night. Every night they do polls in every city, say, what do you think? How are you feeling? Who's going to vote for us? Who's not? They know exactly what's happening. And they chose to spend all their money on television. So I think for the time being, TV is still going to be with us. We have a client called Hulu, which you may know. They broadcast on your... And this is the spot we did to introduce Hulu to America. I guess it's our homage to TV. And we did it to introduce Hulu to America in the last Super Bowl.
You know, they say TV will rot your brain. That's absurd. TV only softens the brain like a ripe banana to take it all the way. We've created Hulu. Hulu beams TV directly to your portable computing devices anytime, anywhere, for free. And once your brains are reduced to a cottage cheese like mush, we'll scoop them out and gobble them up. Because we're aliens. And that's how we roll. Hulu, an evil plot to destroy the world. Enjoy.
I think we've been very, very lucky, and I think maybe we've done a few things smart, but I think maybe one of the reasons that we have been successful is because we started as a small agency in a small market. Neither Alex Bogusky nor I had ever worked on, I think Alex worked on the agency for about 4 months, and I think was fired, I'm not sure. I never had. So we made it all up as we went along, and we never could afford to hire people with experience. So the basis on which we hired people from day one until today is basically brains, talent, passion, courage, curiosity, and experience, in that order. Experience has always come last for us. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's the way we've grown. And I think it's given us a little bit of a different perspective. And I think probably more than ever, because of the emergence of a zillion new technologies, I think probably more than ever, and because there's no economy of scale anymore, 2 people in a Starbucks can take all of our jobs tomorrow afternoon. That's the way this business is. All I need is a laptop to make TV spots. So I think what the business has really come around to is basically talent, getting talent and keeping talent. And we think about that a lot as we've gotten a little bit bigger. You know, we're based in Miami, and people say, well, you know, Miami is cool. And it is, and the reason we were there in the first place is because it's a great place to live. But about 3 years ago, we were getting bigger, and we needed more people, and we realized not everyone likes Miami. Not everyone likes any place. Not everyone likes New York or LA or Sao Paulo. So we thought, okay, what benefits can we give to our really talented people to get them to stay? We could give them, I don't know, dental insurance. You know, they're all 23, they have perfect teeth, they don't need dental. Anyway, we thought about different things we could give them, and what we finally came around to is, why don't we give them a choice of lifestyles? Why don't we say, okay, if you don't want to live in Miami, we'll give you a different choice. So we looked around America for a place that was sort of the opposite of Miami. What we wanted were 2 places that almost everybody in the world would like one or the other. And we looked and we looked and we looked in New Mexico. We also wanted to be a little closer to LA because we worked there a lot. So what we did is we opened a second office in Colorado, in Boulder, Colorado. And Boulder is always on the list of, you know, like the 10 best cities to live in, and blah, blah, blah. It's in the middle of the Rocky Mountains. It's small. There's no traffic. It's not interesting. There are no good restaurants. It's the opposite of Miami. But it's very family friendly, and you can ski in 20 minutes. So we thought, okay, everyone in the world will either like Miami or Boulder, Colorado. We had no clients in Boulder. We still don't. It wasn't about clients. It was about where do people want to live. So Colorado offers this really wonderful, outdoorsy, great family, great, you know, adventuresome lifestyle. Miami is probably more family. I just want to say 2 other things to, you know, if you have to go and do ads tomorrow, and these are things that I say to the people in our place who have to go and do ads tomorrow. And the first one is to not ever be afraid to go overboard. You know, when writers and art directors and digital people, whatever, are sitting in a room, one of the things that usually happens is they say, you know, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? We could never do it, but wouldn't it be? Do it. Just do it, because it'll explode. This is a spot we did for a very non-adventurous retailer that changed the way a lot of people thought about him. It ran in movie theaters. Dogs in commercials are good. And the last thing I want to say, and this is another thing that I say to people at our place a lot, is don't use the money excuse. You know, we've been lucky and we've gotten some big clients and we've gotten some big budgets, so we can spend a lot of money on TV spots. And sometimes people say, well, you know, I don't have enough money to make this good. Which really, and it's interesting because both Alex and I came from the same place, and it pisses us both off just as much. This is a commercial that we did, I think, 19 years ago. It was the first year I was at the agency. It was long enough ago, so I was still directing the commercials and doing the voiceover because we couldn't afford anyone else. And I'm proud of it because we won a Lion at Cannes, and I think the Lion cost more than the spot, this commercial.
Okay, first you've got to get a nice suit. The suit is very important because that's how you get her to notice you. Then once you've got her attention, make your move. Subtlety is the key here.
So like that's less than an hour, man. Thanks.
Podemos abrir algumas perguntas durante uns 15 minutos? Se vocês tiverem alguma pergunta, eu acho que vale a pena explorar mais do Chuck, o máximo possível, please. Tá? Perguntas?
Okay, let me just say one thing. No math questions at all, but I can do history or geography.
Hi, Chuck.
Is this going to be in English or Portuguese?
In English, yeah.
Okay.
Perhaps a little bit of a math, but talking about a little bit of the future, and more on the perspective of a VC guy that you are today. How do you see the agency in the 10 years from now? We talk a lot about creativity, talent, but we have a lot of stuff going on right now on the technology side. So I know it's a very tough question. Everybody's saying a lot of stuff right now. I mean, everybody's saying theories, coming up with a lot of, you know, new visions, but you've seen a lot. So how do you see Crispin, Porter, and Bogusky in 10 years from now? Basically. Thank you.
I don't know. You know, I don't really know how I see us a year from now. We've never really sort of, we've never really thought very much beyond like next Monday. I don't know if that's good or not, but we're not futurists. You know, and people ask us about like new media, like what are we doing with mobile and stuff like that. We sort of wait for the audience to tell us where they want to be. In terms of where we're going to be 10 years from now, I think there are some things that our agency has to get better at. I think we have to get better at truly integrating ourselves. I think we have to get better at thinking about PR. I think we have to get better at thinking about new products, because I think that that's going to be a part of what we do. But it's hard for me to project that. It depends on what happens in the media and stuff like that. Kind of the way we work, and it's never really changed, kind of the way we work is we go in the morning and basically focus on what is the smartest, most effective thing we can do today. And we bring in people who know a lot more than we do about other technologies and listen to them too, but it's kind of a day-by-day thing. I hope we're around 10 years from now, but I hope I'm not. Anyway.
Thank you.
Quando vocês começam a pensar em alguma campanha, o pensamento principal de vocês vai para o problema que vocês têm que solucionar no momento, para o consumidor ou para o que o produto está tentando dizer? Vamos supor, na campanha do Mini, vocês falaram que o produto é muito mais legal do que qualquer campanha que vocês possam fazer. Já no caso da Virgin Airlines, vocês focaram no que acontece com o consumidor. É uma ponte entre Nova York e Londres. Então, quando vocês pegam alguma coisa, é primeiro o problema, primeiro o consumidor ou primeiro o produto?
Yes. I don't know. You know that it's a really good question. I don't have an answer for you. I think our first thought is really probably about the story. Like, where's the story here? I mean, what's going to, and it comes from a lot of different places. I mean, It's not a very good answer, but I don't know that we pick one or the other.
It's a very good answer.
Thank you again. It was great. Obrigado.